Today we're going to make challah bread, or the dough for challah, but we're going to use this dough to make roscon. Roscon is used for Three Kings Day in Spain and many other Latin countries, where the bread is sweetened and in it we hide coin inside the roscon, and whoever gets that piece is the winner for the day, especially for Three Kings. In order to make roscon, it's a large ingredients of 7 cups of unbleached flour, 4 eggs, a half a cup of butter, or you can use canola oil, melted down, 1.5 tablespoons of yeast, 1.5 tablespoons of kosher salt, and a half a cup of honey. So we're going to mix this all together. You do not need to knead the dough as you would pizza and so forth. You want to just make sure the ingredients are incorporated, and then they will rest overnight, and you can use the dough for the week because it makes a lot of roscon. So we're going to melt our butter, heat up the water because it should be lukewarm. Your water should always be warm when putting in yeast to activate it. So we're going to mix the eggs, the salt, the yeast, the honey, butter or oil together. Today we're using butter. Stop saying that. You should always make a sweet dough. A challah dough or a brioche dough is the best dough to use for your roscon. Make sure your butter is melted, your canola oil. Everything should always be at room temperature, not hot, lukewarm. Let's lukewarm our water so our yeast can be activated. 1.5 tablespoons of salt. I use kosher salt in this household. Half of a tablespoon is 1.5 teaspoons, because it's 3 teaspoons for a tablespoon. We will not put the yeast yet in our egg mixture. So what we have here is the salt and 4 eggs, which we'll lightly beat, melted butter, 1 3/4 cups of lukewarm water that has yeast of 1.5 tablespoons in it. And once this is all, and a half a cup, of course, of your honey, we will put the honey in the cup that has butter in it, because then the oil will help it come out. So our water is lukewarm, 130 degrees is the temperature, approximately. We're going to have 1.5 tablespoons of yeast. So 1 tablespoon and 1.5 teaspoons is 1.5 tablespoons. We're going to let that rest. Let's see how hot our butter is. 136 as well. We don't want to cook the eggs, so we're going to let these items rest a little bit before we mix it with the eggs and the honey. And in order for honey to come out, you should always pre-grease your cup. Doesn't always work, but it sure helps. I'm going to put some butter in there. I'm going to measure out we're going to measure out a half a cup of honey. Don't forget, it has to be a sweet dough. Challah bread has 4 eggs. Brioche, well, that's another story. That has a lot more eggs. But I've made the roscon with this recipe, and it's quite tasty. If you ever have honey in your house and it's slightly crystallized, don't worry. A little microwave helps it. It's not bad. So let's see. See, it slides right out. You still need to assist it because it is quite dense. So let's mix in our honey with the eggs. We're going to slowly add our butter. If you don't want to heat your ingredients, you always want to temper it by pouring it on the outer ridge of your glass where it's the coolest. And this will help temper your colder ingredients and not cook them, because it'll trickle down the outside of the glass that's cool. Voila. this all together. Slowly temper in our yeast. Again, same method. Put it on the outside rim so it trickles down and doesn't cook our ingredients. Once you've tempered it, you can pretty much put it slap down in the center, but I like to always do it nice and slow. Good things come to those who wait. We're going to add in our 7 cups of flour. And add it in slowly, because it is a lot. But you're just going to blend it. Make sure the mixture is mixed well. You're not going to knead it a lot because you don't want it to be tough. Because you want it, at the end, the dough to be nice and flaky. And after we mix this, after 2 hours, you can start using the dough after the first initial rise. But the best way to use the dough is if it's nice and cool. So we are going to let it rest for 2 hours and then stick it in the fridge overnight. And during the week, we will use a grapefruit size of a dough for each roscon that we make. So here's 4 cups. And we're slowly going to mix in. And when it starts getting mixed in, you're not going to use the whisk anymore, or the whisk will get very messy. So first we'll just cut it in with a knife, a spatula. You can also, if you have an industrial KitchenAid, if you have an industrial mixer with a dough mixer in it, you can. So we're going to cut the flour into our liquid. Now you can also use a hand dough mixer. This is a neat the gadgets to come up with nowadays. So, if you don't have an industrial mixer with a dough hook, I mean, I have a mixer, but not that big of a mixer for the dough that we make. Okay. I always do it in halves. Even though it's not 8 cups of flour, but I do it in halves because it just helps with the mixing. Remember, do not overmix. You just want to make sure everything is incorporated. Right now it looks like a heavy, wet porridge. And now we're going to mix in the last bit. If you want to, you can use your hands, but you will need to make sure they're floured or everything will stick together. And then we're going to let this rest for 2 hours before we refrigerate it, approximately. And then refrigerate it overnight and use the dough through the week. We're going to make a couple of roscons here. So we'll keep on folding in the dough because we want to make sure everything is incorporated. If you notice that if there's any dry parts, any dry particles, you can add always a splash or so of lukewarm water, because you want to make sure all the pieces get moisture. And again, we're going to let this rest for 2 hours and then refrigerate it. Just put a splash, just always just little splashes. Again, you don't want to over knead and you don't want it to be flaky and dry. You always want it more wet than you do dry, and you don't want it too wet. This is when we put our hands into it. Folded it. There we go. Make sure all the stuff is mixed in. Your honey, your eggs, your 7 cups of unbleached flour, your yeast, your salt, kosher salt, don't overwork it because you want it to be nice and flaky. You actually should never overwork any dough. you have a beautifully incorporated challah dough that we will use to make roscon. Remember, it should be a sweet dough. Challah or brioche are very sweet doughs, and they're great for roscon. So we're going to let this rest, and we'll continue on making roscon. Enjoy! Challah dough to rest. Make sure it's not an airtight container. A simple little bit of plastic wrap, or this pirate. This glass one has a nice lid to it. Now that we've left our challah dough to rest, and it does get to double its size, we are going to take a piece of dough out, approximately a grapefruit size. So good size. Here we go. Here's the beautiful dough. And make sure your counters are clean. You'll need an egg for egg wash. And we're going to preheat the oven to 350. If you're lucky enough to have a marble top counter, then you're in a treat. And if not, you can buy some cutting boards that are marble top to knead the dough on. So you have at least a clean place for your dough. Make sure you flour it. We're going to bring down the sides here. Take off the sides. Here we go. Flour a little bit on the edges so you can help push it down. And again, just a grapefruit size, small soccer ball-ish grapefruit. What you do is rotate the main dough, flip it, flour a little bit, and then you're going to cut this. Please make 4 roscons from this recipe. But tonight we're just going to make 1. So, as you see, here's the dough. I cut it into 4, and one of them is the size of a grapefruit. We're going to form it into a nice ball, and then we're going to cut it into thirds because we're going to braid it and make a nice Christmas wreath looking braid. Now that we have a nice ball here, we're going to cut it into thirds. Knead the dough a little bit. It's cold. It needs to be manipulated a little bit. You can cut it into thirds as a ball. I usually put it into a log format, so we're going to cut this into thirds. And then stretch out each third as if you were making a braid. Cut it into thirds. We're going to roll it all out. And while this rests, because we have to let it rest, into a nice rope, because we do have to braid it as you would braid your hair. Then you'll cover it with some egg wash, and then you can sprinkle it with almonds or or you can sprinkle it with nuts, or you can sprinkle it with colorful fruit, colorful dried fruit. You're going to sprinkle it on top to make it look like a crown. After it does come out of the oven, we're also going to make a nice confectioner sugar glaze. You can put orange juice to make the glaze. You can make it with some flavored liqueurs. Now the grapefruit sized ball is cut into thirds, and now we're going to braid it to make our roscon. And you start in the middle. We're going to start in the middle, just like if you were braiding a hair. So that's one side. Flip it. And there's your braid. And we're going to make it into a circle. And when you line them up, you're going to pinch them. And flip it. Now we're going to let it rest for 20 minutes. So once you've braided it, This is how it will look. We're gonna let it rest, brush it with some egg wash, sprinkle it with some almonds, or you can put some colorful fruit on it to make it look like a crown. You can even hide a piece of nut in one of the slices, so whoever cuts the piece and gets it is lucky for the year. We're going to make our glaze. So half a cup should be fine. Whatever you don't use, save for your next one. We're going to put a little bit of orange juice, not too much, because liquid goes very quickly. Some orange juice. As you see, it's very liquidy, so I need to put a little bit more sugar in there to compensate. There we go. You don't want it thick frosting, and you don't want it watery. You just want it smooth, creamy, cremoso. You want some run, but not too much. Because to add to this orange juice glaze, we're going to put a little bit of liqueur. You can put almond liqueur, orange liqueur, whatever flavored liqueur you like. Goes a long way, so a splash is good enough. Sugar there. There you go. Oh, it smells divine. There. So we have our glaze ready, because you're going to put it in an oven. Now, if you're going to put it on a stone, you bake it on a stone, 25 minutes, if not a good 30 minutes, until it's golden. Put some egg wash in it. Hide your gift. Usually find a good braided section and tuck it under there. And whoever gets that piece is lucky for the year. So we're going to egg wash our braid. You can also put some raw sugar to crystallize it. Again, put some colorful dried fruit if you want to. Some people don't like the dried fruit. We have some flaky almonds. You're going to bake this in a preheated oven of 350 for 25 minutes until it's golden. 350 oven, 25 minutes. In the center of the oven you should bake this until it's golden. I do have a stone cooking tray. If you don't, that's okay. Just pay attention to it. Even though the time is usually 25 minutes, I double check it around 18 or so minutes because you want it golden. You don't want it crispy. And we'll have some roscon. See you in 25. Isn't it beautiful? Now, challah dough does not get crispy like your baguettes do. So this is nice and golden. So it's a nice soft bread to serve on 3 Kings Day, New Year's Eve, or just for dessert. I'm going to put some glaze on it while it's still hot so it can melt down. Buen provecho! Feliz Navidad!